Julia Sinicope, excuse me, says, what is Christ's law and how is it different from the Ten Commandments, which many argue is the moral law we are to keep this day? This has been kind of an issue since I did that discussion with Joel from Right Response Ministries on theonomy. And like I said, I'll probably put it up on my channel sometime soon. The law of Christ is the law of obedience to Jesus. I mean, that would be the law of Christ. I'm going to obey Jesus. Like it's my law is Christ. It makes sense? You just think of law as like the law or the rule is Jesus. I obey him. So I'm talking about his character, his goodness, his commands, all of the above. Jesus summarized his commands to us with love God, right? And love others. So this is the commandment. This is the ultimate commandment that we have is love. But he also told us other things like go and preach the gospel. That's part of the law of Christ. Now that's not part of the Old Testament, really, not the Old Testament law. There's no like go and proclaim these things to everyone around the world. That by faith they can be saved. Like that's not part of the Old Testament law, but it's definitely part of the commands of Christ. So Jesus's commands are not the same. You also say, how is it different than the Ten Commandments, which many argue is the moral law we are to keep to this day? I think the Ten Commandments, and I've said this before, I'll say it again. There are things that have been morally true from the time in Adam and Eve, and that's before the Ten Commandments were given. Some people try to say that Adam and Eve had the Ten Commandments. There's no biblical warrant for saying that. None. Galatians suggests the opposite. Romans suggests the opposite, that before the law, Abraham was there. He was justified 400 years plus before the law. Right? Well, if the law is the Ten Commandments and Abraham had that, then how can Abraham have anything before the law? If Adam and Eve had that, like that's not consistent. So Adam and Eve knew moral truth and laws, didn't they? So God's moral law can't just be the Ten Commandments, like they're identical with each other. But God's Ten Commandments to Israel definitely derives from and overlaps with moral laws, like don't murder. Yeah. Don't have other gods before me. Yeah, that's just a moral truth for all people. What about the Sabbath? I don't think the Sabbath was something that all nations and all people were supposed to do from the beginning of time. I think it was something God gave Israel as a symbol and picture of the rest that he was going to be providing for them if they would trust in him. It's fulfilled in Jesus. As a Christian, I'm not required to fulfill the Ten Commandments as a block. I am required to walk in morality and goodness and righteousness, which ends up overlapping with most of the Ten Commandments. But it's not like I say, well, 9 I follow and 1 I don't. I don't say that. I say, I'm not under the Ten Commandments, right? Period. But this plays out in a way where I still absolutely do not murder, and I don't have other gods before God, and I don't want to lust, I don't want to covet, I don't want to do all those things, lie and steal. It's just that it's the same way in which Abraham knew not to do those things, the same way in which Adam and Eve knew not to do those things. Does that make sense? The Ten Commandments isn't the same thing as just God's morality that he requires of all humanity. I will probably get another question about it and explain it again someday. Maybe it'll start breaking through at one point. By the way, let me just add this real quick. I'm not on my own on the deep end here, okay? There's plenty of other serious Christian, respected Christian teachers, pastors, theologians who would 100% agree. This is not like Mike's own private opinion about the Ten Commandments. This is just something people never talk about. So it feels weird to them when they go, wait, what? These are new ideas.